Okay, so I want you to close your eyes for a sec. It's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Maybe it's 1996. Just gotten home from school. Maybe you're just getting in from work. Turn on the TV. Who do you see?
Oh, that's not even a question. It's Oprah.
It's always Oprah. And she's smiling, right? The lighting is all warm. The audience is cheering like they've just won the lottery. It just feels safe.
It does. For anyone who grew up in the last, 40 years, Oprah Winfrey wasn't just another talk show host. She was like a cultural utility.
A utility. That's a good way to put it. She was the queen of talk. She was the billionaire best friend we all felt we had. The woman who basically taught America how to feel.
That is the monolith. That's the brand, right? The self-made billionaire who came from, intense poverty in rural Mississippi to become arguably the most influential woman on the planet.
And the philanthropist who gives and gives. The person you just want to hug.
Right. That's the image.
Exactly. And that is the version I have locked in my head. But, and this is why we're here today, spend any time on the internet now in, the 2020s, that image cracking.
Oh, it's shattering. It's a fascinating cultural pivot. We're not just seeing random haters. We're seeing this really detailed counter-narrative emerge.
A counter-narrative that suggests what exactly?
It suggests a career-spanning pattern of exploitation, of platforming some really dangerous figures in fraud and sort of unsettling proximity to corruption that maybe we all ignored.
Because
she was Oprah.
So that is our mission for today. We're doing a deep dive into what we're calling the Oprah Paradox.
Yeah.
And we're working primarily from a really comprehensive video analysis by Patrick C.C. titled Oprah is Not Who You Think She Is.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the data points, chronologically, thematically.
And we really need to look at the mechanics of it. Like, how does empathy, her brand of empathy, function as a tool for control?
Mm-hmm.
From the infamous wagon of fat to the Maui wildfires, was the brand ever really about helping us, or was it always about controlling the narrative for her?
It feels a little bit like we're about to ruin my childhood, but I'm ready. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
So where does this whole story actually begin? Because she didn't just appear as a billionaire.
No, and, you have to give credit where credit's due. The rise itself is completely legitimate and, frankly, incredible. We're talking about the early 1970s. She's 19 years old.
19.
And she becomes the youngest person and the first Black woman to anchor the news at WTVF-TV in Nashville.
Which is just monumental for that time.
It's historic. But the thing is, she wasn't actually great at the traditional news part of it. She was too emotional. She couldn't detach herself from the story she was reporting on.
Which in hard news is a flaw, right?
Yeah. It's seen as a major flaw. But then she moves to Chicago in 1984 to host a morning show called AM Chicago. And that flaw, it becomes her superpower.
The source material points out this one stat that just blew my mind. Within a month of her taking over this low-rated morning show, she takes it to #1.
In Chicago.
She beat Phil Donahue. And Phil Donahue was a titan. He was the king.
He was the king. But think about how she beat him. This is, I think, the first key insight for everyone listening. Donahue was, analytical. He was journalistic. He would explore these topics with a certain intellectual distance. Oprah completely flipped the script. She made it about feelings. She was loud. She was tactile. She hugged people on stage.
She wasn't talking at you. She was talking with you, or it felt that way.
Precise. She validated personal experience over any kind of expert analysis. If a guest felt something, that was treated as the truth. She tackled these really taboo subjects: infertility, cocaine addiction, family trauma, but always through the lens of pure emotion.
And that built a very specific and maybe a very dangerous kind of currency.
Trust, not authority, but intimacy. And that trust is what allowed her to sell the world on one of the most bizarre and iconic moments in television history.
The first crack in the facade, 1988, the wagon of fat.
I can see it in my head right now. The Calvin Klein size 10 jeans, the black turtleneck.
And the little red wagon.
Wheeling out 67 pounds of raw, glistening animal fat onto the stage. It was pure spectacle.
And how many people watched that episode?
62 million people. That is Super Bowl numbers for a daytime talk show. It's unheard of.
And the narrative was so clear. It was, I did this, I won, I beat my own biology.
Right. It was framed as this incredible triumph of willpower. Just diet and exercise. But this is where the source material really pulls back the curtain, and it's pretty disturbing. She wasn't just eating less.
So what was she doing?
She was on a medically supervised regimen called OptiFast.
I've heard of OptiFast, but I don't really know the details. What does that actually mean?
It's a liquid protein fast. The source details that she was consuming a powder mixed with water 5 times a day. No solid food at all.
So what was her calorie count?
Her total daily caloric intake was 420 calories.
Wait, 420?
420. Yes.
That's not a diet. That is literally starvation.
It is, by any medical definition, starvation. For context, The famous Minnesota starvation experiment during World War II, which was designed to simulate famine conditions, fed people around 1,500 calories a day.
And she was on 420.
She was on 420. She even admitted later, and I'm quoting here, "I literally starved for 4 months."
But she didn't say that on stage, wheeling out the fat.
No. And that is the core deception. She presented this medically monitored extreme biological hack as a relatable lifestyle change. She had private chefs, she had medical teams, she had this liquid diet. The audience at home had none of that.
So you have 62 million people at home thinking, wow, if I just try a little harder, I can look like Oprah, not realizing Oprah is probably fainting in her dressing room.
And, of course, gaining all that weight back almost immediately, because that kind of severe deprivation just destroys your metabolism. But the damage was already done. This established the Oprah effect. It proved that her personal experience, even if it was anecdotal, even if it was deceptive, was more powerful to her audience than scientific reality.
She became a de facto expert on health because she was one of us.
Even though she was already living a life completely removed from her average viewer.
That idea of, ratings over reality seems to be the perfect segue into the next era the source covers, the late 80s, early 90s, the trash TV era.
Oh, it was the Wild West. You had Jerry Springer, Jenny Jones, Geraldo Rivera breaking his nose on set. The market was just flooded with pure sensation.
And to stay on top, Oprah had
to compete. She had to get down on the mud, but she had to find a way to make the mud look meaningful.
The skinhead episode is the prime example of this.
It's infamous. She invited a group of neo-Nazis and white supremacists onto her stage. Now, the official narrative, Oprah's defense later, was that she wanted to expose their ignorance. She wanted to show America the face of hate so we could all reject it.
Which, on the surface, sounds noble. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, that whole thing.
In theory, yeah. But the source argues that in practice, television just doesn't work that. Television confers data. By putting them on a stage with the lights and the microphones and the national audience,
you're legitimizing them.
You're giving them a platform. You're legitimizing them as a side of the debate that's worth hearing from.
There's a moment, the source points out, where one of the guests literally insults her to her face.
Calls her a monkey to her face on her own show. Yeah. And then claims it's a proven fact.
It just makes my skin crawl about it.
It should. And while Oprah did apologize for that episode later and said she wouldn't let her platform be used for negative energy, the source argues she didn't really stop. She just pivoted to a different kind of sensational.
The Satanic Panic.
The Satanic Panic.
Okay, this is a deep cut. For any younger listeners, can you just explain what the Satanic Panic actually, because it sounds completely made up.
It feels like a fever dream looking back. But in the 80s and 90s, there was this widespread mass hysteria across North America. People were utterly convinced that there was a global underground network of Satanists.
Doing what?
Infiltrating daycares, schools, their own neighborhood to ritually abuse and sacrifice children.
It sounds like the plot of a really bad horror movie.
It was, but it ruined real lives. I mean, people went to prison based on coerced testimony from toddlers, and Oprah, she was right at the center of the megaphone.
Oh, so?
The source details how she hosted guests like Michelle Smith, who wrote the book Michelle Remembers, and another woman named Laurel Rose Wilson, who wrote Satan's Underground.
And these were the supposed survivors?
Alleged survivors, yes. And they told these graphic, horrific stories on her show. Breeding programs for babies to be sacrificed, drinking blood, rituals. And Oprah presented this to her audience not as here is a wild claim, but as this is happening in your neighborhood.
But was any of it actually true?
None of it. Zero. The source highlights that these stories were thoroughly and repeatedly debunked. The FBI investigated for years and found no bodies, no bones, no physical evidence whatsoever.
And so these survivors,
their timelines were physically impossible. Laurel Rose Wilson, one of her biggest guests, was later exposed as a complete fraud who had reinvented her identity multiple times.
So Oprah is basically broadcasting fiction as fact to millions of terrified parents.
And actively fueling a national hysteria. When you have that level of trust from the public and you tell them Satanists are coming for your kids, people panic. It just shows a reckless disregard for fact-checking. If it was emotional, if it was shocking, it got on the air.
Which brings up the story of Duffy Strode, the so-called boy preacher.
This is one of the saddest clips to watch. Duffy was a young child, maybe 5 or 6 years old, who had been taught by his family to scream biblical verses like a fire and brimstone preacher. Oprah puts him on stage.
Then what does the audience do?
They laugh, they mock him. He's clearly in this trance-like state, just mimicking what he's been forced to learn. He's a child being exploited for television.
And Oprah just lets it happen.
She positions herself as the, voice of reason, looking at the camera like, can you believe this nonsense? But she's the ringmaster. She's the one who set up the circus. The source argues it prioritized the spectacle and the chaos over the actual welfare of a minor.
That power dynamic, the ringmaster and the subject, It becomes even more stark when we start looking at her celebrity interview. We tend to think of the Oprah interview as like the ultimate honor. If you make it to Oprah's couch, you've really...
That's the brand, for sure.
Yeah.
But the source has another name for her, the interrogator. Because she held the keys to public opinion, celebrities felt they were under duress. They had to answer her question.
Or risk the wrath of her audience.
Exactly.
The Michael Jackson interview in 1993, I remember watching this live. It was a global event.
90 million people watched it. It was his first real interview in 14 years.
Yeah.
And you can see how terrified he's written all over his body language. And Oprah, she just hammers him.
Are you a virgin? Did you bleach your skin?
She asks about the abuse trauma from his father. She asks about his medical history, his skin condition. And when he tries to deflect or looks uncomfortable, she just pushes harder.
It's like she felt entitled to his secret.
The source notes that, a sense of entitlement. Like she owned the truth of his life, and it was her job to extract it for the audience. It wasn't an interview. It was a deposition.
And it wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern. Look at the Nathan Lane in.
Oh, this is a prime example of her trying to force a narrative. Nathan Lane was on the show with Robin Williams to promote the movie The Birdcage. At the time, Nathan Lane was not publicly out of the closet.
And Oprah would have known that.
Oh, everyone in Hollywood kind of knew, but he hadn't said it publicly. It wasn't his story to tell on her turn. And Oprah just keeps poking at him, asking about his girly behavior. She even turns to Robin Williams and asks, how is he so good at that stuff?
She was trying to out him on national television.
100%. It's so uncomfortable to watch. Robin Williams, being the genius and just decent human being he was, immediately jumped in and started doing all these bits to distract her and change the subject.
He saved him.
He saved him. But Lane said later he was terrified. He wasn't ready. But Oprah didn't care about that. She wanted the scoop.
There's this pattern of judgment, too. The Toni Braxton interview really stands out. Toni Braxton had just declared bankrupt, and Oprah sits there and basically lectures her about her silverware.
Gucci flatware. She shamed her for it. She said something like, I heard you have Gucci flatware. Is that why you're broke? She took on this role of a moral authority, like a strict mother scolding a child for being irresponsible.
That's not empathy, that's judgment.
Pure judgment. And then you have Kelsey Grammer. That one, to me, felt particularly cruel given his family history.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the man has endured an unbelievable amount of tragedy. His sister was brutally murdered. His father was murdered.
And Oprah sits him down and essentially asks, so do you ever actually get over it? She forced him to relive the most brutal, traumatic moments of his entire life right there on camera. The source argues it's a form of what they call trauma extract.
It's not about healing the guest.
It's about getting the cry for the camera.
But I think the scariest part of her power isn't just what she says on camera, it's what she does behind the scenes in the edit. The Ludacris story completely changed how I show.
This is a crucial technical insight into her power. So the rapper Ludacris goes on the show to promote the movie Crash, which he was in.
Right, an Oscar-winning movie.
An Oscar-winning movie. He's there as an actor. But Oprah, who has always been very publicly critical of hip-hop, decides to ambush. She starts attacking his lyrics, the content of his music.
And Ludacris is not a stupid guy. I'm sure he defended himself.
He claims he did.
Yeah.
He said he gave a passionate, articulate defense of hip-hop as an art form, as a reflection of a certain reality. But when the show actually aired,
He was gone.
completely gone, edited out. The source says she cut all of his responses to make him look silent and submissive. She made it look like she scolded him, and he had nothing to say back.
That is terrifying. She literally controls reality. If she wants to win an argument, she just deletes your side of it.
She owns the studio. She
Yeah.
owns the production company. She owns the edit bay. That is the ultimate form of power. And she didn't just use that power to win arguments. She used it to build an empire of so-called experts.
The kingmaker.
The source calls her the kingmaker.
The Oprah effect. It's real. If she recommends a book, it becomes an instant bestseller. If she recommends a person, they become a global celebrity. But the track record of the people she chose, it's not great.
It's actually quite damning when you look at the roster. Dr. Phil,
Yeah.
Dr. Oz, John of God.
Okay, let's start with Dr. Phil. I feel like he's been on TV my entire life. I just assumed he was, like, a famous therapist that she found and gave a show to.
Not at all. Their origin story isn't medical, it's legal. It goes back to the Amarillo beef trial.
The beef trial, I completely forgot about this.
Right. Oprah said something on her show that was critical of beef, implying a connection to mad cow disease, and the Texas cattlemen sued her for millions. She had to go to trial in Amarillo, Texas.
And Dr. Phil was involved how?
Phil McGraw was not her therapist. He was her jury consultant.
He was a trial strategist.
Yeah, he helped her legal team pick the jury. He coached her on how to appear more sympathetic and relatable to a Texas jury. He helped her win the case. And as a reward for helping her win, she gave him a regular segment on her show.
So his entire television career exists not because he was some brilliant psychologist, but because he helped Oprah beat a lawsuit.
That's exactly right. And the source points out this massive red flag that most people don't know. Dr. Phil hasn't been a licensed psychologist since 2006.
2006.
He let his license expire. So for the vast majority of his TV career, he has been a doctor in name only, dispensing advice to millions of people without any regulatory oversight.
And that advice has had some really serious consequences. The source goes into the whole troubled teen industry.
This part is really dark. Dr. Phil frequently recommended that parents send their out-of-control teenagers to these wilderness camps and ranch, specifically a place called Turnabout Ranch.
And these places have a reputation for being nightmares.
Allegedly, yes.
Yeah.
The source details these horrific accounts from former guests, including Danielle Bregoli, who you might know as Bod Bobby, who was sent there after her appearance on his show.
And what does she describe?
She describes sleep deprivation, forced manual labor, being forced to sleep on wooden planks, and constant emotional abuse.
And Oprah's brand is directly attached.
Oprah's production company, Harpo, produced Dr. Phil's show for years. She was profiting directly from a show that was, according to these allegations, funneling children into these potentially abusive facilities.
Then you're the next one on the list, Dr. Oz.
Now, Dr. Oz was different. He started out as a brilliant, respected cardiothoracic surgeon, a legitimate talent. But once he got into the Oprah ecosystem, he started to drift. He realized that eat your vegetables and exercise doesn't get huge rating, but miracle cures in a bottle, that gets rating.
The green coffee bean extract, I remember that.
He called it magic in a bottle.
Yeah.
He promoted it on a show. Sales went through the roof. The study that backed it was later retracted because the data was completely flawed.
And didn't he get into actual trouble for that?
He was eventually dragged before a Senate subcommittee and basically scolded by senators for giving people false hope and promoting pseudoscience. But again, the damage was done. Oprah had already stamped him as America's doctor. She bypassed the entire peer review process and gave him direct access to the public's trust.
But the worst one, the one that actually frightened, is John of God.
This is the absolute nadir of the Oprah effect. John of God was this Brazilian spiritual healer. He claimed to perform psychic surgery.
What does that even mean?
It means he would use, unsterilized kitchen knife to scrape people's eyeballs or shove forceps up their nose. It was visceral, it was bloody, and he claimed it was all divinely guided.
And Oprah endorsed this man.
She didn't just endorse him, she flew down to Brazil, she sat with him, she produced a whole special about his miracles and broadcast it to the world. She gave him the ultimate seal of approval.
And who did?
A monster. He's currently serving a massive prison sentence in Brazil. Over 600 women came forward accusing him of sexual abuse, rape, and running a sex trafficking ring under the guise of spiritual healing.
Right.
Now, to be fair, we have to be clear. There's no evidence Oprah knew he was a predator, but the source argues that is not a valid excuse. When you have the power to direct millions of vulnerable, sick, desperate people to a healer,
you have a responsibility to vet them.
A profound responsibility. And she did. She prioritized the spiritual vibe and the good television over basic background check. She spent her audience's trust capital on a predator.
It feels like there's this constant friction between the image of her generosity and the reality pack. Which brings us, of course, to the you get a car moment.
It's a meme. It's legendary. The screams of joy. 276 brand new Pontiac G6.
But as always, there's a fine print, isn't there?
There is always a fine print. It's called the gift tax. The source explains that in the U.S., when you win a prize like that, it's considered taxable income. Oprah paid for the cars. She paid for the registration. She didn't pay the tax.
So how much was that bill for the audience?
It varied by state and their income, but it was up to $7,000 per person.
Imagine being in that audience. You're a teacher or a nurse, you're ecstatic, and then a few weeks later you get a bill for $7,000 that you absolutely do not have.
Exactly. For many of them, the gift became a financial crisis. Some had to sell the car immediately just to pay the taxes on it. And it highlights this massive disconnect. Rich people don't worry about a $7,000 tax bill. Regular people absolutely do.
That disconnect feels even more tragic when we talk about the school she built in South Africa, the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for
a $40 million investment. And again, look at the focus of it initially. It was aesthetic, high thread count sheet, private chefs, beauty salons, state-of-the-art theaters. She wanted it to be beautiful.
But beauty isn't the same as safety.
No, it's not. A huge scandal broke almost immediately. A dorm matron, a woman named Virginia Makapo, was accused by multiple students of physical and sexual abuse.
And Oprah's reaction?
She flew in immediately. She went full mama bear, as she called it. She said she was cleaning house, and she did. She fired the staff. But the source suggests her version of protection quickly morphed into something that looked a lot more like control.
How so?
Parents started describing the new rules as being like a prison or a detention camp. The girls were isolated from their family. Visits were severely restricted. The source argues that because Oprah isn't a mother herself, she confused protection with isolation. She thought the only way to keep them safe was to lock them away from the entire world.
It's tragic. It sounds like she wanted to be the savior so badly that she stopped listening to the very people she was trying.
And that brings us right up to the present day. The moment that I think truly broke the spell for the internet generation, the Maui wildfire.
This was in 2023. The town of Lahaina basically burnt to the ground. It was a complete catastrophe.
And Oprah owns over 1,000 acres of land in Maui. She's a major landowner, a part-time resident. So she teams up with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, another part-time resident, to launch the People's Fund of Maui.
And they seeded it with $10 million together, which, a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
Yeah.
But then they turned to the camera and asked us to donate.
Two people with a combined net worth of nearly $3 billion asked people living paycheck to paycheck to chip in.
The backlash was instantaneous and brutal. The pocket change argument took over the internet. People did the math. For Oprah, $5 million is the financial equivalent of the average person donating maybe $50 or $100. It just felt incredibly tone deaf.
And it reignited all those old conspiracy theories about her landhold.
The land grab theory. When wealthy outsiders own these massive tracts of land in a place like Hawaii, there's this deep historical fear of displacement. So when the fire hit, a lot of people didn't see Oprah as a neighbor helping out.
They saw her as something else.
They saw a feudal lord protecting her estate while the village burned. They saw a billionaire asking the peasants to fund the recovery.
It's amazing how quickly that narrative flipped. She went from being the savior of every situation to the colonizer in the public imagination almost overnight.
And it's because that facade of relatability finally completely collapsed.
Yeah.
You can't be a billionaire land baron who asks the public for money and also be just like us at the same time. The math just doesn't work.
We also have to talk about her circle. The proximity to power, calls it.
This is the club. If you are a billionaire media mogul, you go to the same parties, you move in the same circles as other moguls. And unfortunately for her legacy, that list includes people like Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, and Russell Simmons.
And look, I want to be fair here. Guilt by association, tricky thing. Just because you're in a photo with someone doesn't mean you know about their crimes.
I agree 100%. But the source isn't critiquing the associations so much as her response when the crimes are revealed. Take Harvey Weinstein. He was a predator on an industrial scale.
And Oprah was very friendly with him. There are pictures, quotes.
Very friendly. And when the scandal broke, the whole world waited for Oprah, champion of women, the great voice of survivors, to come out and condemn him, her friend.
And what did she do?
She deflected. She gave this big speech at the Golden Globes about how this is a systemic issue, about how women have been conditioned to please men for centuries. She generalized the problem.
It's not about Harvey, it's about the whole culture.
Which is true. It is about the culture. But the source argues this was a brilliant and strategic rhetorical move. By making it about everyone, she avoided having to talk about her friend Harvey. She diluted the specific accountability into a vague, inspirational platitude.
It's a way of protecting her circle while still sounding like she's leading the charge.
It's narrative control again. She is always getting in front of the story.
That really is the thesis of the source material, that Oprah is, in a way, too big to fail.
Yeah.
Whether it's the beef trial, the school scandal, or the Maui fires, she uses her unparalleled platform to reframe the narrative.
She doesn't just participate in the media landscape. For decades, she was the gate.
So when we step back and we look at this whole Oprah paradox, what are we really?
I think we're seeing the fundamental difference between a person and a brand. The brand is empathy. The brand is I hear you, I see you. But the person is a ruthlessly effective capitalist who has maintained her power by controlling exactly what we see, what we hear, and, most importantly, who we trust.
It really does feel like the end of an era.
The source makes a direct comparison to Ellen DeGeneres.
That's a strong comparison. Ellen was the be kind lady. Until the internet found out, well, that maybe.
And once that glass cracked, it just shattered. You can't unknow it. The source suggests we are seeing the exact same thing happen with Oprah. The internet has democratized information. Oprah can't edit a TikTok video the way she could edit her own show.
She can't cut Ludacris's mic on Twitter.
The control is gone.
The monopoly on the truth is gone. We don't need a court verdict anymore to lose trust. We just need to see the pattern.
The pattern of the diet, the pattern of the so-called experts, the pattern of the deflection, it all adds up.
And it leaves us with a really heavy final question. When you see a billionaire on a screen offering you empathy, looking you right in the eye, are they really seeing you?
Or are they just looking at their own reflection in the camera lens?
That's the thought I want you to sit with. Just because something feels good doesn't mean it's true. Always question the messenger, even if, and maybe especially if that messenger is the queen.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.